The blizzard had teeth. Jacob bent into the wind, each step a battle through knee-deep snow. Christmas Eve, 1882, and Montana showed no mercy. His coat did little against the cold that found every seam, every gap. The farm sat another mile ahead, lost in the white fury that swallowed the world. He should have stayed in town, but 3 children waited at home. And Christmas morning came whether a man was ready or not. Then he heard it. A cry. Faint enough to be the wind's trick. Jacob stopped. Listened. There again. Not wind, something living. He followed the sound to a skeletal cottonwood, its bare branches clawing at the storm. At its base, half buried in fresh snow, lay a bundle. Jacob's hands shook as he pulled back the thin shawl. A newborn, lips blue, eyes barely open. A girl. God above, he whispered. A scrap of paper tucked beside her fluttered in his grip. The words blurred in the darkness. But he made them out. Her name is Elsa. Please save her. I have nothing. You're her only hope. Jacob's mind raced. 3 children at home already. Sarah, Thomas, Emma. The pantry held maybe 2 weeks of flour. Winter had only just begun. Every resource stretched thin as wire. But the baby's heartbeat pulsed against his palm, faint and fast as a bird's. The decision made itself. He unbuttoned his coat and tucked the infant inside. Against his chest. Her skin felt like ice. He wrapped his arms around her, trying to share what warmth his body held. Guess we're family now, he whispered. The wind howled agreement or protest, Jacob couldn't tell which. He turned toward home, toward the dim light of his cabin, barely visible through the storm. His boots crunched through snow that tried to hold him back with every step. The baby stirred against his heart, still alive, still fighting. Jacob walked faster, behind him. The cottonwood disappeared into white nothing. Ahead, that single golden window beckoned like a promise. He carried both burden and miracle toward it, no longer alone in the storm. The blizzard raged on, but inside his coat, pressed against his ribs, a tiny life depended on him making it home. 1 foot forward, then another. The light grew closer. He would make it. They would make it. He had to believe that. Dawn broke quiet and cold. Jacob pushed through his door as first light touched the windows. Ice clung to his beard. His fingers barely worked the buttons of his coat. The fire had burned low, just coals now, and he moved to build it up with wood that felt heavy as stone in his exhausted hands. The baby hadn't cried since he'd found her. That worried him more than if she'd screamed. He knelt by the hearth, holding her close to the growing flames. Color slowly returned to her cheeks. Her eyes opened dark and deep. She looked at him with an expression too old for something so new. Papa. Jacob turned. Sarah stood at the loft ladder, 10 years old and already so much like her mother. Her eyes widened at the bundle in his arms. What is that? A baby, Jacob said simply. Thomas appeared behind his sister, 8 and curious about everything. Then Emma, 5 and still rubbing sleep from her eyes. All 3 children crept down, drawn by wonder. Where'd she come from? Thomas asked. Found her in the storm. Someone left her to die. Jacob's voice went rough. Couldn't leave her there. Emma reached out with one small finger to touch the baby's hand. The infant's fingers curled around Emma's, and the little girl's face lit up like sunrise. She's holding me. Is she ours? Sarah asked. Something in her voice, hope mixed with fear, made Jacob's chest tight. Her name is Elsa, he said. And yes, she's ours now. Emma clapped her hands. Thomas grinned. Sarah knelt beside Jacob. Studying the baby with a mother's eye she'd learned too young. She's so small. Sarah whispered, We'll take good care of her. Papa, I promise. The door rattled. Jacob tensed. But it was only Mrs. Brennan from the next farm over. Bringing her usual Christmas Eve eggs, the widow stepped inside, shaking snow from her shawl, and froze when she saw the scene. Jacob Hartwell. Is that a baby? Yes, ma'am. Where? She stopped, read his face. Her expression shifted to something between pity and concern. Another mouth to feed. That's bold of you. Jacob couldn't leave her to freeze. No, of course not. Mrs. Brennan set down her basket. But winter's just starting. You've got 3 already and... She caught herself, glanced at the children. Well, you'll manage. You always do. After she left, Jacob stood at the pantry. Flour, beans, salt pork. 2 weeks' worth if he stretched it. Maybe 3 if they were careful. With a baby needing milk, he closed the pantry door. Behind him. His children's laughter filled the cabin as they took turns holding Elsa. The sound was bright and warm and achingly fragile. Did I just doom us all? The thought came unbidden. Jacob pushed it away and turned back to his family. 4 children now. God help him. Evening settled over the cabin like a held breath. The children finally slept. All 4 of them. Jacob had moved the older 3 to one bed in the loft to make room, and they'd gone without complaint. Sarah had even smiled about it, called it an adventure. But now, in the quiet, doubt crept in like cold through cracks. Jacob sat by the fire, watching Elsa sleep in the cradle he'd built 2 years ago. The cradle meant for a child who never took a breath, meant for Mary's last baby, the one that came too early and took her with it. He'd kept the cradle in the barn since then, couldn't bear to look at it. But tonight, it seemed right to bring it in, to let it hold life again. Papa. Sarah descended the ladder, barefoot and wrapped in a blanket. She should be asleep. What is it, sweetheart? She sat beside him, silent for a moment. Then, you're worried. No use lying to Sarah. She saw too much, understood too much. 10 years old going on 30. We don't have a lot of food, Jacob admitted. And babies need... Mama would have kept her. The words hit like a fist to the chest. Jacob looked at his daughter, saw Mary's eyes looking back. The same unwavering compassion, the same certainty about what was right. Your mama had a bigger heart than sense sometimes, he said, but his voice held no criticism, only love. She'd say that's what hearts are for. Sarah leaned against his shoulder. Elsa needs us. Papa. Maybe we need her too. Jacob thought about that. About the 2 years since Mary died. How he'd moved through days like a man underwater, providing for his children but not really there, not really living. Maybe, he whispered. Sarah kissed his cheek and climbed back to bed. Jacob watched her go. This daughter who'd grown too wise too fast. He looked at the baby again. At Emma's cloth doll tucked beside her in the cradle, given without asking. At the shared blankets. The willing sacrifices his children made without hesitation. Her name is Elsa. She's ours now. He'd said the words earlier. Now he had to mean them. Had to trust that somehow. Love would be enough. Outside. Snow continued falling. The world buried itself deeper in winter. Jacob stood at the window, one hand on the cold glass. Behind him, warmth, family, life breathing in rhythm. Ahead, the longest winter of his life. He'd chosen love over logic. Now came the test of whether love could keep them all alive. Jacob turned from the window. He laid another log on the fire and sat in Mary's rocking chair. Elsa slept peacefully, unaware of the gamble her presence represented. Welcome home, little one, Jacob whispered. God help us all. The fire crackled. The wind moaned. And in the cradle, Elsa dreamed innocent dreams while the man who'd saved her wondered if he'd made a terrible mistake. 3 weeks passed like water through a sieve. The cabin found new rhythms. Sarah woke first now, heating water for Elsa's morning washing. Thomas split his blanket without being asked. One half for his bed, one half lining the cradle. Emma surrendered her Sunday hair ribbon to tie back the baby's blanket. Small sacrifices. Daily acts of love. But at dinner, the truth showed in the bowls. Jacob ladled soup more water than beans now. He filled 4 bowls, each portion noticeably smaller than last week. The children sat quietly, no one reaching for seconds that didn't exist. Sarah caught his eye across the table. She smiled, then broke her bread in half and passed it to Thomas. "I'm not very hungry tonight," she said lightly. Thomas knew it was a lie, took the bread anyway. Gave half to Emma. Jacob's throat went tight. His children were teaching him about generosity, and they didn't even know it. Elsa slept in her cradle, oblivious. Mrs. Brennan's goat provided milk, so the baby thrived. Ironic mercy, the child he'd taken in was fed while his own children grew thinner. Sunday came. The Hartwells trudged to church through mud and melting ice. Inside, the congregation made space for them. But conversations died as Jacob passed. After service, Mrs. Brennan patted his arm. "You're doing a good thing, Jacob." But Tom Sterling, who owned the big ranch north of town, shook his head. Admirable sentiment. Hartwell. But is it practical? Charity begins at home. They say, "She is home," Jacob said quietly. Sterling's expression said he thought Jacob was a fool. Maybe he was right. That evening, Jacob caught himself smiling at Elsa's tiny fingers gripping his thumb. The baby had Mary's chin. Or maybe he just wanted to see his wife in this new life. Thomas sat at the table carving a wooden horse for Emma. Sarah mended by the fire, saving lamp oil. Emma sang softly to the baby, making up songs about spring and sunshine. The cabin felt alive in a way it hadn't since Mary died. But in the pantry, the sacks grew lighter. The jars emptied. Jacob did the arithmetic over and over, hoping for different answers. None came. They had maybe 10 days left. 2 weeks if he cut portions again. Late that night, after the children slept, Jacob stood over them. 4 beds, now 3 in the loft. 1 cradle by the fire. 4 lives depending on his choice. Sarah had kicked off her blanket. Jacob pulled it back up, noticed how her wrist bones showed sharp beneath her skin. Thomas mumbled in his sleep, one hand reaching toward his sister's. Emma slept curled around her pillow, face peaceful despite the hunger she never complained about. And Elsa, the baby who'd started all this, she slept soundly, well-fed and warm. Who am I saving? Jacob wondered. And who am I destroying? The question had no answer. Or too many answers. He banked the fire and sat in Mary's chair, watching his family sleep. Outside, February wind rattled the shutters. Winter was far from over, and Jacob had no idea how they'd survive it. The fever came on a Tuesday. Elsa woke screaming, her skin hot as a coal. Sarah felt her forehead and went pale. "Papa, something's wrong." For 3 days, the family fought. They took shifts keeping vigil, cool cloths, gentle rocking, prayers whispered in the dark. Sarah sat with the baby while Jacob worked. Thomas fetched water every hour. Emma refused to leave Elsa's side, singing her made-up songs until her voice went hoarse. Jacob barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Mary in her final hours, heard the midwife's sorry words, felt the weight of the tiny body that never took breath. Not again. Please, God, not again. The 3rd night, the fever peaked. Elsa's breathing went shallow. Her skin burned so hot Jacob feared she'd catch fire. At 3 a.m., everyone else finally slept. Exhaustion had claimed them. Only Jacob kept watch. Sitting in Mary's chair with Elsa limp in his arms, he wetted the cloth again, laid it on her forehead, prayed words he wasn't sure he believed anymore. "Don't leave." He whispered to the baby. We just found you. Don't leave. But even as he said it, he felt her slipping away. The same horrible helplessness he'd felt with Mary. Love wasn't enough. Care wasn't enough. Some things broke no matter how hard you tried to hold them together. Tears came. He couldn't stop them. 2 years of grief poured out in the darkness. Mary, the baby they'd lost, and now Elsa, this stranger he'd found in snow who'd somehow become his daughter in just 3 weeks. Papa! Sarah stood at the ladder, wrapped in her blanket. She crossed to him, knelt beside the chair. She's leaving, Jacob said hoarsely. Like Mama, like, no. Sarah put her hand on Elsa's chest, feeling the heartbeat. She'll stay. Love keeps people. Papa. Love doesn't. He stopped, looked at his daughter's face, so certain despite everything. It does, Sarah insisted. Mama loved us, and she's still here. You love us, and we're still here. We love Elsa, and she'll be here too. Love keeps people. Jacob pulled Sarah close. She wrapped her arms around him and the baby both. They sat that way as night stretched toward dawn. The first bird sang. Light touched the window, and Elsa's skin began to cool. Jacob felt at first the fever breaking like a storm passing. The baby's breathing deepened. Her color shifted from dangerous flush to healthy pink. Sarah. I told you, his daughter whispered. Love keeps people. By full morning, Elsa was smiling again. Thomas woke and whooped with joy. Emma climbed onto Jacob's lap, and suddenly all 4 children were there, piled together in the rocking chair that barely held them all. Jacob held his family, feeling their weight, their warmth, their stubborn vitality. For the first time since Mary died, he felt truly present, not just surviving, living. Thank you. He whispered to whatever God listened. Thank you. But even as relief flooded through him, reality waited. The fever had broken. Elsa would live. The pantry, though, was nearly empty. One crisis averted, another still coming. February showed its teeth. A cold snap descended, brutal and unrelenting. Ice turned the windows to frosted glass. Wind found every crack in the cabin walls. And the pantry grew emptier by the day. Jacob stood in the general store. The last of his carpenter's tools laid on the counter. His father's saw, the good chisel, the level that had built his barn and half the fences in the county. These should cover flour and beans, he said quietly. The shopkeeper, old Mr. Chen, frowned. Jacob, you'll need those come spring. I need food now. Mr. Chen wrapped the tools in cloth with reluctant hands. Other men in the store watched. Some looked away. Tom Sterling leaned against the stove, arms crossed. Orphanage in Helena takes children. Sterling said, might be kinder than slow starvation. Jacob's hands curled into fists. But what could he say? The man might be right. He took the flour and beans, left his tools behind, walked home through wind that cut like knives. That night, dinner was thin soup and 1 biscuit split 4 ways. The children ate slowly, making it last. Sarah gave most of hers to Thomas. Emma picked at her portion, then pushed the bowl toward Elsa's cradle. For when she's bigger. Emma said. Jacob's chest ached. His children were starving themselves. For him. For each other. For a baby they'd known less than 2 months. Later. A knock at the door. Mrs. Brennan stood on the porch, holding a basket. Charity, Jacob said flatly. No, thank you, ma'am. Neighborliness, she corrected. And you'll take it for the children. Jacob Hartwell. Or I'll tell your Sarah you're too proud to feed her. Pride warred with necessity. Necessity won. The basket held bread, preserves, a small ham, Riches. Salvation for another week. Thank you, Jacob managed. Mrs. Brennan touched his arm. Her eyes held pity. And somehow that hurt worse than Sterling's contempt. After she left, Jacob stood at the window, watched snow fall. Behind him, his children devoured bread like it was manna from heaven. Their joy stabbed at him. I did this. I chose this. The next day, the barn roof caved under snow weight, not completely, just enough to let weather in, threaten the animals. Jacob stood in the wreckage, calculating costs he couldn't afford. Fix the barn or feed his family. Shelter or sustenance. There was no right answer. That evening, he stayed outside after chores. Couldn't face going in, couldn't face their hopeful faces and empty bowls. Thomas found him in the barn, sitting on a hay bale in the cold. Papa, it's dinner time. I'm coming. Thomas didn't leave. He sat beside Jacob, 8 years old and too thin, trying to be brave. We're okay, Papa, Thomas said. We got the food Mrs. Brennan brought, and Emma says spring is coming soon. She says she can smell it. Jacob looked at his son, at the faith in those young eyes. When did you get so strong? He asked. I learned from you. But Jacob didn't feel strong. He felt like he was breaking, failing, drowning. They went inside together, sat at the table. Jacob ladled soup, more water than substance, watched his children pretend it was enough. Elsa cooed from her cradle, happy and healthy and oblivious. I saved her. Jacob thought, but am I destroying them? The question had no answer, only the arithmetic. Cold and unforgiving. 2 weeks of supplies left. Maybe less. Winter still had 6 weeks to go. Jacob looked at the note again, the one he'd kept. I have nothing. The mother had written. Neither did he. Late February brought the darkest night. Jacob couldn't sleep. He sat by the dying fire, watching his children in the loft. 4 bodies huddled under every blanket they owned. Sarah's arm draped protectively over Elsa. Thomas's hand reached across to touch the baby's back. Emma slept curled against her sister's side. They looked like they were drowning, clinging to each other for dear life. Jacob's fault. His choice. His pride. He thought about Sterling's words. The orphanage in Helena. Maybe it would be kinder. Maybe Elsa would have a better chance there. Maybe his older children wouldn't starve trying to save a baby who wasn't even theirs. But she is ours. Something whispered inside him. She's ours now. Jacob buried his face in his hands. 2 years since Mary died. 2 years of numbness, of going through motions, of surviving but not living. And now he'd condemned them all. Papa. Sarah stood at the loft ladder, wrapped in her blanket. She crossed to him, silent as a ghost. Can't sleep, she asked. Thinking. About giving Elsa away. Jacob's head snapped up. How did you? I hear you at night, pacing, worrying. Sarah sat beside him. You're thinking maybe she'd be better off somewhere else. Maybe she would be. No. Sarah's voice was firm. She wouldn't. She's ours. Papa. We chose her. I chose her. I'm the one. We all chose her. Me and Thomas and Emma. We choose her every day. Every time we share our food. Every time we give up something so she can have it. That's choosing. Papa. Jacob stared at his daughter, this child who understood more than he did. You're starving, he said roughly. All of you. Because of me. We're loving, Sarah corrected. There's a difference. She took his hand, held it tight. Mama used to say love doesn't divide. Remember, she said it multiplies. I didn't understand then, but I do now. Jacob shook his head. Sarah. Look at us, Papa! Really look! She gestured toward the loft. Thomas used to be selfish with his things. Now he shares everything without being asked. Emma was scared of the dark. Now she sleeps peacefully because she knows she's not alone. And me, Sarah's eyes shone. I was angry at God for taking Mama, at you for being sad all the time, at everything. And now I have someone to take care of, someone who needs me. Elsa gave me purpose again. She squeezed his hand. She didn't take from us, Papa. She gave us back to ourselves. Jacob looked at his children sleeping. Really looked this time. Sarah was right. They weren't diminished. Despite hunger, despite hardship. They were more than they'd been. More patient, more generous, more alive. Elsa hadn't subtracted from his family. She'd added to it in ways that had nothing to do with arithmetic. Your mother would be proud of you, Jacob whispered. She'd be proud of all of us, even you, Papa. Especially you. Mary's words came back to him. Clear as if she stood beside him, love doesn't divide. Jacob, it multiplies. He finally understood. First light touched the window. Outside. Imperceptibly. The wind shifted. Something in the air felt different. Softer. Jacob stood. Looked at his family. Made his peace with the choice. If they faced hunger, they faced it together. If they survived together. And if they didn't, well, at least they'd have loved. Really, truly loved. Better that than the half-life he'd been living since Mary died. Go back to bed, sweetheart, he told Sarah. She kissed his cheek, climbed the ladder. Settled in with her siblings, her arm going immediately back around the baby. Jacob lay down on the floor beside the fire. For the first time in months, peace settled over him. Outside. The wind quieted. Winter wasn't over. But spring was coming. He could feel it. March arrived with a miracle. Not the weather, though, that turned too. The brutal cold finally easing. The real miracle came on Sunday, at church. The Hartwells arrived late, Jacob carrying Elsa while his older children walked beside him. They looked thin but determined, heads high despite everything. Inside. The congregation stirred. Then Mrs. Brennan stood from her pew. Jacob Hartwell, she announced loudly. I have something to say. Jacob froze. Here it came. The judgment, the condemnation. But Mrs. Brennan smiled. I've been watching your family this winter. Watching how your children share. How they care for that baby like she's blood. How they never complain. Never falter. She looked around the church. They've shown us all what love looks like. What family means. Tom Sterling cleared his throat. Stood. Jacob braced for criticism. I was wrong, Sterling said gruffly. Called you impractical. Said charity begins at home. But I see now Elsa is home. And you've got work waiting if you want it. Hartwell, carpentry, spring building, good pay. One by one, others stood, offered help, work, supplies, seed for planting. Someone promised milk. Another offered to repair the barn roof at no charge. Jacob stood speechless, Elsa in his arms, as his community, the same community that had judged him now, stepped forward to support him. After service, people crowded around, pressed food into Sarah's hands, ruffled Thomas's hair, gave Emma a new doll. Someone tucked coins into Jacob's pocket before he could protest. You showed us what matters, Mrs. Brennan said softly. We're just returning the lesson. Right on the ride home. The wagon heavy with donated supplies, Thomas said. Papa, why are they helping now? Jacob thought about it. I think they needed to see it was real. That we weren't going to give up. That love was stronger than winter. Is it, Emma asked, stronger than winter? Jacob looked at his 4 children. At the provisions piled around them, at the spring sun breaking through clouds. Yes, he said. It is. That evening. The cabin felt different. The pantry full. The barn roof being repaired by neighbors. Enough firewood stacked for the rest of the season. Enough. Jacob sat on the porch after dinner, all 4 children with him. Sarah held Elsa, teaching the baby to clap. Thomas carved another wooden horse. Emma sang. The world remade itself before Jacob's eyes. Snow melted. Green shoots pushed through mud. Birds returned. Papa, Sarah said, we're going to be okay, aren't we? Jacob pulled her close. Yes, sweetheart. We're going to be fine. More than fine. They'd survived winter, survived doubt and hunger and fear, and they'd done it together. Elsa grabbed Sarah's finger, laughing. The sound carried across the yard, bright as bird song. Jacob closed his eyes, felt sun on his face, peace in his heart. They'd made it. 7 years passed like a gentle river. The carriage that arrived one summer afternoon was fine, too fine for their small farm. Jacob watched from the porch, curious. As a woman emerged, she was perhaps 35, dressed in traveling clothes that spoke of wealth. Her face was kind but careworn, and her eyes fixed immediately on the children playing in the yard. On Elsa, 7 years old now, laughing as she chased Thomas around the garden. The woman went pale, put one hand to her mouth. Jacob descended the porch steps. Can I help you? Ma'am, I'm looking for Jacob Hartwell. That's me. She took a shaky breath. My name is Catherine Wells. 7 years ago, on Christmas Eve, I left my newborn daughter under a cottonwood tree in a blizzard. Jacob understood immediately. You're her mother. Yes, her birth mother. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. I was alone, 16, destitute. I thought she'd die anyway, at least this way. Someone might find her, might save her. I did. We did. I've looked for you for years. Made money, married, was widowed, kept searching. Catherine watched Elsa play. I came to ask, to offer, I can pay you back. Money, education for her. Whatever you need. Jacob followed her gaze. Elsa ran to Sarah, now 17, who caught her little sister and spun her around. Thomas, 15 and tall, carved a whistle for Emma, 12 and already beautiful like her mother. The farm thrived. The cabin had been expanded. Room for everyone. The garden overflowed with vegetables. Neighbors visited often, drawn by the Hartwell family's warmth. You already gave me everything, Jacob said quietly. Catherine turned to him, confused. Jacob gestured to the scene before them. I was dead inside when I found Elsa. My wife had died 2 years before. I was surviving, not living, going through motions. My children were doing the same. He watched Elsa shriek with laughter. That baby in the snow, she saved us, gave us purpose, taught my children about generosity and love, taught me about it. Jacob's voice grew thick. She didn't take from our family. She gave us back to ourselves. Catherine wiped tears. She's happy. She's loved. I can see that. Catherine reached into her bag, pulled out papers. I've set up a trust for her future. Whatever she wants, education, travel, anything. She handed them to Jacob. But she's yours. I'm not here to take her, just to say thank you, and to know she's okay. More than okay, Jacob said. Come, meet them. He called the children over. They came running, Sarah with Elsa in her arms, Thomas and Emma close behind. Kids, this is Mrs. Wells. She's Elsa's birth mother. The children went quiet. Then Sarah, wise Sarah, stepped forward and held out Elsa. Would you like to hold her? Catherine took the little girl with shaking hands. Elsa looked at this stranger, then smiled her gap-toothed smile. "Hi," Elsa said brightly. "I'm 7. Do you like horses?" Catherine laughed through tears. "I do. Papa made me one. Thomas carved it. Sarah painted it. Emma made a saddle." Elsa touched Catherine's face with innocent curiosity. "Are you sad?" "No, sweetheart, I'm happy. So happy." They had dinner together, Catherine and the Hartwells. She met the neighbors who stopped by the community that had rallied around Jacob's stubborn love. She heard the stories of that first winter, saw the thin shawl, framed above the mantel. At sunset, she prepared to leave. "Thank you," she told Jacob on the porch, "for being the kind of man who stops in a blizzard, who chooses love over logic." "Thank you," Jacob replied, "for trusting that someone would—" Her carriage disappeared down the road. Jacob stood with his children around him, Sarah ready to start teaching at the new school, Thomas planning to learn blacksmithing, Emma dreaming of becoming a nurse, and Elsa nestled against his side. "Papa," Elsa asked, "am I really staying here forever and always?" "Good." She hugged him tight. "This is home." Inside, the table waited, set for 5. Bread and butter, stew and vegetables from their garden, enough for everyone, with extra for whoever might stop by. Jacob looked at the thin shawl on the wall, remembered that Christmas Eve, the blizzard, the impossible choice, the best gifts. He'd learned, came wrapped in the hardest choices. He'd been dying when he found Elsa. She'd saved him just as surely as he'd saved her. Love didn't divide. It multiplied beyond all measure. "Come on," Jacob said to his children. "Let's eat." They gathered around the table, his family, built from choice and stubbornness and faith that love was stronger than winter. And it was. God help him. It was outside. The last light faded to stars. Inside, the Hartwell family bowed their heads in gratitude. For second chances, for found families. For the night a crying baby in the snow taught them all what home really meant.